Hello and welcome to the TF1 show. I'm your host, Tinus Ferreira, and let me tell you, as Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran sing in their seminal crossover country hit, everything has changed. Vettel is out, Sainz is in, Ricciardo fills the gaps, and Cyril Abiteboul fills himself with comfort food. Now we need to answer the question, where to from here? So, you all know that there's been quite a busy couple of days in the Formula One world with drivers shuffling seats, people losing their jobs, people sending passive-aggressive statements into the cyberverse. It's been, I'd say the most exciting week in the driver market that I can remember in a long time, actually. It's been very, very fascinating to see all of it play out. And today's episode, I guess, is to maybe touch base with you all and to discuss everything that has happened, especially since my previous episode that was, I think, released just after Vettel announced that he was no longer going to be driving for Ferrari in 2021. So since then, Sainz has been announced as Vettel's replacement. Ricciardo has been announced as Sainz's replacement. We still don't know where Vettel is going to go, and Renault is also now in a situation where they need to find a suitable replacement for Daniel Ricciardo in their car. So what to do except to record a podcast and discuss all of the different possibilities that we can have. So here I am, and let's start with Carlos Sainz and his seat at Ferrari. So I think pretty expected. I think, and I did say this during my previous episode, that I think it was probably between Sainz and Ricciardo for the Ferrari seat, with different reasons for signing one above the other. Seems like Ferrari decided to go the Sainz route, which obviously to me was excellent news, and it's been well publicized on this podcast. Just how much I like Sainz, how much I rate him as a racing driver. So I think this is a great opportunity for him, and for him to further his career and then to also make his mark at a team like Ferrari. Now, a lot of people think that he is essentially going in as the number 2 driver, or de facto number 2 driver after Charles Leclerc. And in some ways I agree, and in other ways I don't agree. I think it's definitely not an explicit agreement between Sainz and Ferrari that he will be playing the supporting act to Charles Leclerc. I think maybe Ferrari might be going in with the expectation that he's naturally going to slot into that role. I'm not that sure, to be honest. I think Sainz is going to be quick. I think whether he's going to be as quick as Leclerc, I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to be as quick over one lap, especially at the beginning. However, I think in terms of operating during race day, I think he's going to potentially provide Charles with a lot of headache. I think we've seen how good Sainz is with overtaking. He's good at defending. He's good at managing his tires, at managing his pace. He's very consistent. I think he can be an excellent asset to the Ferrari, driver lineup. And I really think he can make things difficult for Charles Leclerc, which I think from Ferrari's perspective is not a bad thing. I think it's going to be good if there's a healthy competition between the two drivers. I also think that that's the only way that they can move forward and that they can actually drive to improve their car and to improve their team. To not have drivers that are complacent, or drivers, especially, given that these are quite inexperienced, or let's maybe not say inexperienced, because I don't think Sainz is inexperienced, 2 young drivers. I think this is the youngest driver lineup Ferrari's had in 50 years, with Sainz being 24 years old and Leclerc being 22. Now, Sainz has had, his first season in F1 was in 2015, so he's had 5 seasons in F1 already, which is actually quite a lot. And from what I also understand, after listening to the feedback from especially the McLaren team and the McLaren engineers, he's actually a very, very smart guy, and he applies himself incredibly well into the team and into understanding how he can be faster and the potential shortcomings of the car, and how the car could be developed further. And I think that was one of the big positives that he brought to the McLaren team when he joined. So I think that might be a big asset to Ferrari, especially given that they're losing somebody like Vettel, who's obviously a 4-time world champion, seasoned veteran, and has a wealth of experience. Because and I think it's important to note that Leclerc, he is the big talent that he is, and he's proven himself to be such a competent racing driver, but he's only been in Formula 1 for 2 seasons, and you can be as fast as you want. Experience does count, especially when it comes to the car development, the feedback and the engineering side of Formula 1. So I think that's where Sainz can definitely make his mark on the team and actually be a big asset to the Scuderia. Now, from Ferrari's perspective, does it make sense to take Sainz over Ricciardo? I think yes. I think they made the right choice. They have a young lineup that can be a long-term development curve process, whatever you want to call it, a long-term project that Ferrari can build on year after year. It might be able to provide them with that consistency that they've been after for so long. And I know a lot of people would say, yes, Carlos Sainz is just keeping the seat warm for some of the Ferrari juniors, and I guess there's an argument to be made for that. However, Mick Schumacher has not yet been, the undisputed barnstorming winner-take-all champion that we saw Leclerc be in his heyday or in the Formula 2 years. I mean, so Schumacher won Formula 3, however, Formula 2 has been a bit of a struggle. So I don't necessarily know whether it's going to be that easy for Ferrari to just justify to put Mick Schumacher into the car, especially in the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, let's for argument's sake say Schumacher has an amazing F2 season. They're probably, Ferrari would probably move him up into Alfa Romeo next year, where he'd potentially stay for, I would say, 2 years minimum before Ferrari would consider moving up into the big team in any case. So that's already 3 years where Sainz has the potential to state his case, to maybe embed himself within the team and make it as difficult as possible for Ferrari to justify letting him go and putting another young guy, Schumacher, into the car. So it's going to be fascinating to see Sainz and Leclerc go up against each other. I'm very excited to see them go. I think they have different skill sets. I think people love to underestimate Carlos Sainz. I think he can make a big impression, and I really hope he does, because I think it's going to be fantastic for the sport in general. All right, so I think that's everything I have to say about Carlos Sainz and Ferrari. I think we now need to move across to Daniel Ricciardo and the fact that he has now signed for McLaren, and he will partner Lando Norris in 2021, given that Norris also announced in the same week that his contract has now been extended for the additional year. Another tantalizing battle, obviously, this McLaren one, where we have on the one side Daniel Ricciardo, who's a proven race winner, a guy that has done amazing things at Red Bull, somebody that can do damage. And on the other side we have Lando Norris, who has also been one of those child prodigies alongside Verstappen and Leclerc and Norris. He's won everything in front of him except coming second in Formula 2, who's obviously shown a great turn of speed, who's somebody that he outqualified Carlos Sainz last year, and we know Carlos Sainz isn't a slouch. Just thinking about how these two could potentially stack up against each other is fascinating. I don't think Norris is a pushover. Again, there are people saying that Norris isn't as fast as people hyped him up to be. I disagree. I think he had a lot of bad luck last year. It was his first year in Formula 1. A lot of, especially race management tricks, and the dark arts of time management and all of those things that he had to learn. In qualifying trim, he was very impressive for a rookie, so I think you can give Ricciardo a run for his money. But then on the other hand, we all know how good Ricciardo is, and I think this was his last get out of jail free card that he just used in terms of his chase for his dream of winning the world championship, because except if a top seat opens over the next 2 to 3 years, with Mercedes, Ferrari or Red Bull, and it seems more and more unlikely, given that each of those three teams has their own sort of junior programs that they're running. Ricciardo basically has to now bank on McLaren maintaining their steep curve of improvements from last year, and to hopefully become a race and championship winning team in 2 to 3 years' time. Because if not, his time has probably run out. And I know that he has been very vocal about the fact that he still believes he can win a championship. He believes he has the abilities to win a championship. And I agree. I think he does have a lot of tools in his cabinet to win a world championship. But unfortunately, the biggest tool that he needs, he doesn't have at the moment, and that's the car or the vehicle within to really, really, fight for the big titles. And I think, given what we saw last year, McLaren is probably a better bet than Renault. But then again, it could be a situation where McLaren all of a sudden hits a bit of a plateau and Renault sorts out their problems, and all of a sudden Renault this year is again ahead of everybody else. So I really do hope for Daniel that he made the right decision. I think he did make the right decision. If you look at the leadership of the McLaren team, if you look at Zach Brown, Andreas Seidel, it's the right noises coming from that camp, and you can see that they're making smart, informed, long-term decisions, which I think bodes well for both Norris and Ricciardo. So I think it was the right decision to leave Renault. Obviously, Cyril Abiteboul wasn't happy. We saw the passive-aggressive statement they put out about loyalty in this difficult period, and about staying together and working together, and essentially saying that Daniel Ricciardo is not a loyal guy and he dropped them at the first opportunity. But as I said, the guy, he's on borrowed time. He needs to go, and he needs to go to the place that's giving him the best chance to win a championship. And to be honest, Cyril Abiteboul, Renault last year wasn't the best place to win a championship, and doesn't seem like it's going to be the best place to win a championship for quite a while still. So I think Ricciardo was well justified in his choice. And also, it's funny, for Cyril Abiteboul to talk about, and I really like Cyril Abiteboul. I think he's a shady character, and I enjoy him a lot. But I think it's rich coming from him to talk about, consistency and, staying loyal to your team and loyal to your people. If you think about his driver history over the last couple of years, he fired Jolyon Palmer, he fired Sainz when he got Ricciardo. Ocon was supposed to have a seat with him, then he fired Ocon and sent him away to get Ricciardo as well. He fired Hülkenberg to get Esteban Ocon last year, so he doesn't really care about loyalty or consistency. He also just wants the best driver lineup for his team, and he's well justified to do that, but then don't come with your fake moral high ground and say that in this difficult times people need to be loyal and they need to value team spirit and things like that, because Cyril, you do not do that, and you haven't shown to do that over the last 5 years in any case. So I guess rant over, and we need to maybe have a think about where Renault goes from here, because obviously they now have Esteban Ocon signed for the next 2 years and an empty seat in 2021 where Ricciardo was supposed to be. Now, there are a couple of options that Renault has available. The first being to chase Sebastian Vettel. I somehow don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to go after a hotshot driver like Ricciardo again, because I think they got quite heavily burnt after paying Ricciardo $40 million for his 2 years at Renault, and then for him to basically pick up sticks and leave. I don't think they are willing to fork out that big amount of money for Vettel in the first place. And secondly, I don't really think they think Vettel is going to want to go drive for them. So Vettel is a possibility, but I wouldn't bank on that. Second possibility is to get to ring up their old friend Nico Hülkenberg that they chucked aside last year, and to ask him to come back in 2021. Now this seems like a more realistic option to me in the greater scheme of things. Hülkenberg knows the team, he knows the setup, he knows how everything works there. He has expressed desire to come back into F1. Whether he is when he's going to be able to swallow his pride to come back to the team that essentially fired him. Don't know, whether that's something that he would want to do. I think from Renault's perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think Hülkenberg is going to come with big demands about money or status or anything like that. Hülkenberg would just come and do the job alongside Esteban Ocon. So I think that's a good, solid choice for them. Another option would potentially be to try and poach somebody like Valtteri Bottas from Mercedes. Promise Bottas maybe, that he can be more of a team leader role. However, alongside Esteban Ocon, I don't know how possible that would be. And also, I don't really see Bottas willingly giving up a prize seat at Mercedes to go to Renault. That's now, of course, if Mercedes decide to renew his contract for 2021, which is also maybe not as likely given that George Russell is itching to get into that Mercedes seat. But that's a conversation for another podcast, so we can leave that one for now. But in any case, Valtteri Bottas, maybe, but I'd say a lot less likely than somebody like Nico Hülkenberg. Now, they also have the possibility of graduating one of their junior program drivers. So there are 2 Renault juniors that are going to be driving in the Formula 2 season this year. The one being Guan Yu Zhou, the Chinese driver who brings a lot of financial backing, and the other one being Christian Lundgaard, who will be a rookie this year in Formula 2 after a very good performance in Formula 3 the year before. I would say Zhou is probably the more likely at this stage to graduate into the Renault F1 team if that's what they decided to do. However, I would say even more weight should probably be placed on their actual performance in the Formula 2 season when it gets underway, hopefully at some point this year. And I think it can easily be like a straight shootout between the 2 drivers as to who gets the Renault seat, whichever one does better in the Formula 2 championship. So that could be a nice change to actually see some fresh blood or fresh faces in the Formula 1 paddock in 2021. So yeah, it would be interesting to see if Renault actually decides to make use of their investment into these young drivers and to pull them up into the big team from the get-go. Now, the last option that they have, and the most interesting one, is something that's now been rumored over the past week after all of the drama with the teams and drivers has been going on, and that is Fernando Alonso making his much publicized return into Formula 1, with rumors coming out of Italy and France saying that Alonso has signed a pre-agreement with Renault to come back for them next year in 2021. Now, how legitimate these rumors are, I don't know. Logically, I just don't know how possible or how plausible it is for Fernando Alonso, given that he left the sport because he didn't have a championship-winning car, for him to come back and drive around for 2 more years in a car that isn't going to win a championship. Maybe he misses just the thrill of driving that much that he would be willing to come back, and I guess I would understand that if that's what he wanted to do. He still is a world-class driver, one of the most adaptable, versatile drivers ever in motorsport, and obviously brings a wealth of experience, but then at the same time, also a lot of baggage, a lot of negative energy if Renault isn't the team that he wants it to be. Does Renault want somebody like that over and above all of the problems that they're already dealing with the economic problems, the financial problems that they have, all of the rumors around their potential exit over the coming years, and the Renault board losing interest in the sport? Can they really afford to have somebody like Alonso that's going to bring a whole lot of publicity and press and attention onto the team, where the team actually just wants to, get down to business, focus, and rebuild to the team that they once were more than 10 years ago? So obviously a very romantic rumor, the return of Fernando Alonso to Renault. However, practically and just strategically, I don't really see how that makes sense for either party. But again, stranger things have happened. Now, the last guy I want to speak about on this podcast is the subject of our previous episode, Sebastian Vettel. Now, obviously, when I recorded last week's episode, Vettel still had, a couple of options open, especially the McLaren option. if depending on which driver they decided to replace him with. And it now turns out that, and again, it's not been confirmed by either party, but it's now, come out in the news at least, that Ferrari never actually formally offered Vettel a contract or a new contract, and that negotiations actually broke down quite soon in the process, where it sounds like Vettel wanted another 2-year contract and Ferrari was only willing to offer him a 1-year contract, and neither party was essentially willing to budge on their demands, and then the relationship broke down and Ferrari went and chased Sainz. Now, what options does Vettel have at this point? I guess the most obvious one is Renault, but we've already spoken about all of the potential reasons as to why I don't think that's probably going to make much sense for Vettel. Another one that's been all over Twitter especially, and it's been quite annoying me quite a lot, where Sebastian Vettel's fans has been going on social media not being able to fathom a universe where Sebastian Vettel isn't in Formula One, and essentially just spamming Mercedes' admin account saying, sign Vettel, sign Vettel, sign Vettel. With just basically these fans, rabid, crazy fans, wanting Mercedes to sign Vettel and fire Valtteri Bottas to have Vettel in the Mercedes car in 2021. And obviously, me being a man of restraints and a man of calm, decided to just think about this a bit and ask myself, what potential reason would Mercedes have to sign Sebastian Vettel other than publicity? And I had to think, and I thought there isn't any. Mercedes has no reason other than publicity to sign a 4-time world champion in Sebastian Vettel, because firstly, why would they? Or let's paint two scenarios. Let's rather do this. Let's say they decide that it's time for them to graduate Russell into the Mercedes team, right? Russell has now spent 2 years at Williams. That he's been a Mercedes junior driver for a couple of years now. They've invested a lot of money into him. It's time for him to graduate into Formula One and for him to partner Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest drivers of all time, and essentially, learn from the old master. Learn the tricks of the trade. Learn the way that the team works, how to win championships, how to win races. That would make a lot of sense to me from a Mercedes perspective as to building the team and making the team relevant in the future. But let's say there's another scenario. Let's say Mercedes feels Russell isn't yet ready to make the big step into the big team at the end of the year. Now what do? Well, they have Lewis Hamilton, who has indicated basically that he's willing to continue with the team for a couple of more years. Great. 6-time world champion, maybe 7 at the end of the year, signed on the dotted line, ready to go for another year at Mercedes. Now, they also have Valtteri Bottas, who has been an excellent, let's say, second act to Hamilton. He has done everything expected of him. He has performed his role in maintaining harmony, in winning races, in scoring points, avoiding conflict. He has done all of those things perfectly, and Mercedes is still winning championships. Why would Mercedes just not keep Bottas then? Why would they fire Bottas, pay more probably for someone like Sebastian Vettel, cause all sorts of difficulties in terms of ego between Hamilton and Vettel and who gets preference, and just cause all sorts of unnecessary friction, go back to, the way it was between Hamilton and Rosberg, where internal conflict was just, not a good thing for the team. Why would Mercedes do that? It makes no sense to me. Absolutely no sense to me. Why would they throw all of the investment into Bottas and Russell into the water and then all of a sudden go and snap up a 4-time world champion from Ferrari? It just doesn't make sense. And I wish these people on the internet can get it into their heads. I know it would be great for Mercedes to have a 9-time world championship team in their car. It sounds very romantic. Hamilton versus Vettel in the same car. Who's going to come out on top? Again, sounds very tantalizing. I would like to see it. I have my own views as to who's going to come out on top in that case. But I just don't think we'll ever get to see it because, and we know Toto Wolff is a rational man. He makes rational decisions based on facts. That's why he likes Russell so much, because Russell is also all about the facts. He makes decisions based on facts and on reason and on logic. And if you look at the facts and the reason and the logic, I don't think Toto Wolff can sign Sebastian Vettel. And I posed this question to Twitter on my Twitter account, and I was shocked and horrified to find that I was very much in the minority of people saying that it makes sense for Mercedes to sign Sebastian Vettel, where I think over 70% of you guys that voted said that it makes sense for Mercedes to sign Sebastian Vettel. And I am here on this podcast to tell all of you that you are wrong. It does not make sense for Mercedes to sign Sebastian Vettel. And if they do sign Sebastian Vettel, I think they must watch out, because a team like Ferrari or a team like Red Bull can come and snatch their crown while Hamilton and Vettel bicker about who's supposed to be ahead in every given race. That's the last thing I'll say, and that's where I'm going to leave it. And maybe what I can also then add as a little tail at the end of this discussion is, I still think at this point in time, with the information that we have, Vettel is probably going to retire at the end of the year, which is a very sad thing. And I understand how the people in Formula One can be upset about the fact that a 4-time world champion has essentially been priced out of the market, if you can use the economic term, where he still has the desire to remain in the sport, but there just isn't any room for him in any team. And that is a sad reality, and a reality that hopefully won't be one for much longer if they can get the new financial regulations right and maybe close up the disparity between the teams. But again, that's a conversation for another day. So I think what we need to do is we need to enjoy Sebastian Vettel while he is in Formula One. I hope he can have a good season this year, maybe cut out some of the mistakes last year, and maybe just blow Leclerc out of the water to maybe, stick it to Ferrari and show them that actually they made a big mistake in letting him go. So I think that's the best potential outcome for Sebastian Vettel, and I hope we can see that happen. Alright, so that's it for today's episode. Do you agree with the decision made by the drivers? Will we see Alonso back in F1? Will we see Vettel in F1 at all? Well, tune in to the TF1 show next time, and hopefully we'll have some more answers. In the meantime, you can subscribe to the podcast if you think my humor is just the right amount of dry, and you can follow me on Twitter, where my handle is @TF1show, for some snap polls, instant thoughts, and F1 nonsense. I'm also on Instagram, so you can go and give me a follow there too, and I can't wait to chat with you guys again. Bye.